if you doubt that such is their purpose. Observe with what passionate consistency the mystics of muscle are striving to make you forget that a concept such as mind has ever existed. Observe the twists of undefined verbiage, the words with rubber meanings, the terms left floating in midstream, by means of which they try to get around the recognition of the concept of thinking. Your consciousness, they tell you, consists of reflexes, reactions, experiences, urges, and drives, and refuse to identify the means by which they acquired that knowledge, to identify the act they are performing when they tell it, or the act you are performing when you listen. Words have the power to condition you, they say, and refuse to identify the reason why words have the power to change your blank out. A student reading a book understands it through a process of blank out. A scientist working on an invention is engaged in the activity of blank out. A psychologist helping a neurotic to solve a problem and untangle a conflict does it by means of blank out. An industrialist, blank out. There is no such person. A factory is a natural resource, like a tree, a rock, or a mud puddle. The problem of production, they tell you, has been solved, and deserves no study or concern. The only problem left for your reflexes to solve is now the problem of distribution. Who solved the problem of production? Humanity, they answer. What was the solution? The goods are here. How did they get here? Somehow. What caused it? Nothing has causes. They proclaim that every man born is entitled to exist without labor, and the laws of reality, to the contrary notwithstanding, is entitled to receive his minimum sustenance, his food, his clothes, his shelter, with no effort on his part, as his due and his birthright, to receive it from whom? Blank out. Every man, they announce, owns an equal share of the technological benefits created in the world. Created by whom? Blank out. Frantic cowards who posture as defenders of industrialists now define the purpose of economics as an adjustment between the unlimited desires of men and the goods supplied in limited quantity. Supplied by whom? Blank out. Intellectual hoodlums who pose as professors shrug away the thinkers of the past by declaring that their social theories were based on the impractical assumption that man was a rational being. But since men are not rational, they declare, there ought to be established a system that will make it possible for them to exist while being irrational, which means while defying reality. Who will make it possible? Blank out.
This book is continued on Disc 15.
Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, Part 3 continued.
Disc 15.
Intellectual hoodlums who pose as professors shrug away the thinkers of the past by declaring that their social theories were based on the impractical assumption that man was a rational being. But since men are not rational, they declare, there ought to be established a system that will make it possible for them to exist while being irrational, which means while defying reality. Who will make it possible? Blank out. Any stray mediocrity rushes into print with plans to control the production of mankind, and whoever agrees or disagrees with his statistics, no one questions his right to enforce his plans by means of a gun. Enforce on whom? Blank out. Random females with causeless incomes flitter on trips around the globe and return to deliver the message that the backward peoples of the world demand a higher standard of living. Demand of whom? Blank out. And to forestall any inquiry into the cause of the difference between a jungle village and New York City, they resort to the ultimate obscenity of explaining man's industrial progress, skyscrapers, cable bridges, power motors, railroad trains, by declaring that man is an animal who possesses an instinct of tool-making. Did you wonder what is wrong with the world? You are now seeing the climax of the creed of the uncaused and unearned. All your gangs of mystics, of spirit or muscle, are fighting one another for power to rule you, snarling that love is the solution for all the problems of your spirit, and that a whip is the solution for all the problems of your body, you who have agreed to have no mind. Granting man less dignity than they grant to cattle, ignoring what an animal trainer could tell them, that no animal can be trained by fear, that a tortured elephant will trample its torturer, but will not work for him or carry his burdens. They expect man to continue to produce electronic tubes, supersonic airplanes, atom-smashing engines, and interstellar telescopes, with his ration of meat for reward, and a lash on his back for incentive. Make no mistake about the character of mystics. To undercut your consciousness has always been their only purpose throughout the ages, and power, the power to rule you by force, has always been their only lust. From the rites of the jungle witch doctors, which distorted reality into grotesque absurdities, stunted the minds of their victims, and kept them in terror of the supernatural for stagnant stretches of centuries, to the supernatural doctrines of the Middle Ages, which kept men huddling on the mud floors of their hovels, in terror that the devil might steal the soup they had worked 18 hours to earn, to the seedy little smiling professor who assures you that your brain has no capacity to think, that you have no means of perception and must blindly obey the omnipotent will of that supernatural force, society. All of it is the same performance for the same and only purpose, to reduce you to the kind of pulp that is surrendered the validity of its consciousness. But it cannot be done to you without your consent. If you permit it to be done, you deserve it. When you listen to a mystic's harangue on the impotence of the human mind and begin to doubt your consciousness, not his, when you permit your precariously semi-rational state to be shaken by any assertion, and decide it is safer to trust his superior certainty and knowledge, the joke is on both of you. Your sanction is the only source of certainty he has. The supernatural power that a mystic dreads, the unknowable spirit he worships, the consciousness he considers omnipotent, is yours. A mystic is a man who surrendered his mind at its first encounter with the minds of others. Somewhere in the distant reaches of his childhood, when his own understanding of reality clashed with the assertions of others, with their arbitrary orders and contradictory demands, he gave in to so craven a fear of independence that he renounced his rational faculty. At the crossroads of the choice between I know and they say, he chose the authority of others. He chose to submit rather than to understand, to believe rather than to think. Faith in the supernatural begins as faith in the superiority of others. His surrender took the form of the feeling that he must hide his lack of understanding, that others possess some mysterious knowledge of which he alone is deprived, that reality is whatever they want it to be, through some means forever denied to him. From then on, afraid to think, he is left at the mercy of unidentified feelings. His feelings become his only guide, his only remnant of personal identity. He clings to them with ferocious possessiveness, and whatever thinking he does is devoted to the struggle of hiding from himself that the nature of his feelings is terror. When a mystic declares that he feels the existence of a power superior to reason, he feels it all right, but that power is not an omniscient super-spirit of the universe. It is the consciousness of any passer-by to whom he has surrendered his own. A mystic is driven by the urge to impress, to cheat, to flatter, to deceive, to force that omnipotent consciousness of others. They are his only key to reality. He feels that he cannot exist save by harnessing their mysterious power and extorting their unaccountable consent. They are his only means of perception, and like a blind man who depends on the sight of a dog, he feels he must leash them in order to live. To control the consciousness of others becomes his only passion. Power lust is a weed that grows only in the vacant lots of an abandoned mind.